morning, everybody. Welcome to our September CGBN webinar. Hope everybody is doing fantastic today. Just so that everyone is aware, this session is being recorded. We ask that anyone who is not presenting or is part of the panelists to please mute themselves and turn off your recording. The format is over in an hour and a half. We will have a presentation first and then followed by Q&A for the presenter. We will end the recording after the Q&A. We'll go into the needs and wants. If you have any listings or trade missions, please let us know. We are happy to put it on the CGBN page. After this session will be recorded, it will be on the CGBN YouTube page, and a YouTube channel and CGBN page. In the meantime, please put your information in the chat, such as name, email, phone number, and your needs and wants. My name is Dimitri Lachman. I'm the current chair for CGBN. I also serve as a treasurer for NICAR. I would like to say a big thank you to our past CGBN chairs, Ahmed Badat, Teresa Mueller, and Bill Kane. Thank you for all your help. You guys are always amazing. Now I would like to introduce our presenter today, Mike Cobb. Michael Cobb is a founder and CEO of ECI Development, a major player in international real estate since 1996. He has developed diverse residential projects across Central America, including private villas, Marriott Residences, and the region's first low EMF community. Michael, who lived as an expat for 14 years in Nicaragua, shares his deep understanding of overseas property investment in his book, aiming to help investors avoid costly mistakes. Additionally, he found Exotic K International, which became K's International Bank, revolutionizing regional mortgage services. A prominent speaker and consultant, Michael has been featured in major publications and on television, and actively engages with his audiences on social media. Under his direction, ECI Development now owns over 4,000 acres of beachfront property and continues to expand into South America, while offering solutions like reforestation visas and teak timber ownership for second residency. Mike, it's all you.
All right, Dimitro, thank you very much. Good to be with you all today. Trying to think, I guess it was about 3 years ago, Ahmed invited me, Teresa, you guys had me on, and then I really appreciate the re-invitation. It's always nice to connect with both of you and see lots of familiar faces here on the webinar this morning. So welcome, everybody. Thank you again for having me. I'm going to go ahead and start a screen share. And I think what I would really like to try to do is keep the presentation to about maybe 25 to 30 minutes. Leave lots of time for Q&A, and we're just going to pound through it very, very quickly. And I move quickly, I talk quickly. So if you think of anything, you have some questions, please jot them down, and we'll get to those at the end. So basically, you guys are commercial realtors, and I think that's different than what we do from a retail standpoint. Our business is developing resort communities in Latin America for a retail client. But what I've done is I've really tried to tweak this a little bit to give a perspective on what it's like to be a developer in the region, right? To bring that commercial aspect to this presentation specifically. We're going to talk about some challenges, the opportunities, and then drill down to one specific case study. But what I always like to do is just start with big ideas. And so, we have this collision of two great ideas. And the example here is cars and fast food, right? This was certainly a collision of two great ideas. Cars are great, fast food is great, and boom, what's that really turn into? Well, we look at the power of synergy, right? Now we have drive-throughs, right? That's the culmination of cars and fast food. But $626 billion of consumption through drive-throughs last year in 2023. And so when you start to look at that, 50 years ago, there was no such thing. And today it's $500 billion of business. And so when you see these convergences of huge, big ideas, what it should be screaming to us as business people is opportunity. And so the two big ideas I have today are the remote revolution and a time machine. And we're going to look at both of these. We're going to start with the remote revolution, kind of work through it, and then we're going to bring this time machine concept in a little bit later to layer in. And I hope by the end of the presentation, you will see how these two big ideas come together in a very powerful synergy. And as business people, our ability to be at the front edge of this curve is truly powerful and transformative to our businesses and our ability to generate a new business concept like a drive-through is in that particular example. So first big idea is this. Right now, for the first time in human history, I love saying that because you don't get to say that very often, right? How about the first time in human history, right? Right? Well, this is what it is. It's a decoupling of work and the location of work. This is truly the first time in human history that this has happened, right? We go all the way back to caveman, right? I mean, you had to be there to kill the animal. You had to be there to pick the berries, right? Whatever it was, caveman times, right? So then we had this thing called the agricultural revolution, right? We figured, wow, we can put fences around the animals and we can grow these berries in a patch, right? But you still had to be there to tend the flocks and tend to the crops and pick them, right? So work and the location of work were still absolutely co-joined. Then in the 1600s, 1700s, this big industrial revolution, right? Changed the agricultural society to an industrial society. But you know what? People still had to show up and go work the machines in the factory, right? So work and the location of the work still connected. Then in the 60s, late 60s and into the 70s, this word, just the word, came about. Post-industrial revolution, right? People like Alvin Toffler and John Nesbitt with Future Shock and Megatrends, some great books kind of the 70s, envisioning this future where people were freed and they could work from anywhere, post-industrial revolution, right? But the problem was is we were still locked into industrial management styles, developed largely by Frederick Winslow Taylor, who worked for Ford to help Ford really make his assembly line super efficient, right? And so we had this industrial model that demanded we get in our cars, sit in traffic just like this, and go do this all day. But there's no reason you do this and do this after sitting in your cars, right? I mean, so wow. I mean, like it's crazy. The old management model on top of something that didn't have to be that way. And really the reasons boil down to this, right? The employer's reason, the manager's reason is, if I can't see you, I don't know that you're working. And the employee is, gosh, if I ask to work from home, I'm not going to get that raise or I'm not going to get that promotion, right? So we had this fear on both sides of the equation. And all of a sudden, not COVID, but the reaction by governments to COVID broke open this management style that had entrenched itself for 50 years after many of the technologies were available, right? The stay-at-home work orders freed workers. And if you had to work from home, right? But home can be anywhere. So now all of a sudden, home can be a wonderful vacation spot, right? And so this transformation for the first time in human history, work and the location of work have been decoupled for a large percentage of the workforce. First time ever. It's huge. And so now, you say to yourself, gosh, I always wanted to golf when I retire, right? The lines of when I retire, I'm going to golf, right? But you know what? There are lots of fun things to do, whether it's golfing or rafting or ballooning or exploring, right? People love to hike and do some really fun things or, play in the water. I mean, these are all the reasons, the sexy reasons people are going overseas and why home can be anywhere. It's really, really exciting. And what the heck? Margarita madness, right? See, we've got all this excitement, right? Sales, we know sales is emotional, right? We as professional salespeople, we sell emotionally, we justify logically. As consumers, we buy emotionally, right? And there's a lot of emotion entangled with this idea of moving overseas, all the fun stuff, golfing, fishing, snorkeling, whatever it happens to be, right? And the problem is when we let emotion rule the purchase process, right? A lot of times we end up with margarita madness. And what margarita madness is, some people, this wonderful, these couple folks here, they're down in Cancun, they're having the time of their life. And a guy catches them walking down the beach and says, hey, come on up here. Take a look at our project up here. And, if you spend a little time walking around it with me, I'll buy you dinner at Senior Frogs tonight. We'll give you the coupon for Senior Frogs. Well, 4 hours later, they're off at Senior Frogs celebrating the purchase of a condo, right? That's margarita madness, right? And sadly, a lot of people transact outside their home countries, a lot of it in the tropics, right? This way, right? It's an emotional purchase. So what do we have to do? We have to slow down. We have to slow down. And we, as real estate professionals, we must help our clients slow down, right? Maybe you're off behind something, but hopefully you understand a lot of these dynamics, right? But our job as real estate professionals is to help our clients slow down, help them make better decisions when they're buying property overseas, because we simply don't know what we don't know. There's kind of two elements that we're going to cover on this particular topic. We don't know what we don't know, and we need to forget what we think we know. Let's start here with we don't know what we don't know. All right, we have this consumer resource guide we publish. It's a great resource for your clients who are looking at property overseas. But look at this question. Is the home or condominium plumbed for hot water in all the bathrooms? That is a beautiful condo. This happens to be in Costa Rica. $1 million views, right? Beautiful condo in Costa Rica, 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath, nice bathroom. It's not super luxurious, but that's a pretty darn nice bathroom, right? $400,000, $1 million views looking at the Pacific Ocean. And when you look under the sink, that's what you see. And if you don't understand that, that's a cold water pipe coming out of the wall with a Y splitter so that both of the taps up on top of that sink have water coming out of them, but they're both cold. And the shower in 2 of those 3 full baths were cold as well. And so the question that we really need to ask ourselves as real estate professionals is, would we want to help our clients know that they need to look under the sink before they buy that condo, right? I think the answer is, of course, we would like to help them do that, right? So we don't know what we don't know, and there are ways to figure that out, right? The second part of the equation is this, right? I mean, this is this old adage, right? We don't compare apples and oranges, right? We compare apples and apples, right? Isn't that what we compare? But are all apples the same thing? No, they're not, of course. And nuance is important. And again, this is where our expertise as professionals in the real estate industry comes into play. We understand nuance in our business, whereas many clients wouldn't. Apples and oranges, apples and apples, right? No. It's just not that simple, right? And so we as consumers and our clients need to forget what they think they know. We have to forget what we think we know. And I've got an example on that, right? So this idea of, going overseas, especially to the developing world, right? We are moving from the land in North America, Europe, of seller beware to buyer beware. This is a very different thought process. And I've got a couple examples on that in a minute, but just one silly example right here. I mean, talk about living in a bubble. This is an escalator, and there are six warnings. 6 warnings on how to ride an escalator, right? We live in an incredibly litigious society. And so this idea of seller beware, right? We're in this bubble, but that's a kind of a silly example, but these are all entities and organizations in Europe and North America that protect the consumer from the seller, right? We live in a bubble, we work in a bubble, we transact real estate in a bubble, okay? When we go overseas, we are moving from seller beware bubble to buyer beware. And the problem is, as consumers, we don't know how to act, think, question, transact in a buyer beware environment. We're just not used to it, right? We've lost that skill set, so to speak. So it's really about asking better questions. And so here's another question that kind of goes to that point. Is there a build requirement? Is there any kind of zoning, right? What about property integrity? So here's an example of a property that I'm very familiar with. We actually work in part of this gobbledygook right here, where you've got buildings that are cross lines. You've got buildings that are in right of ways, right? I mean, like this is insanity. And we kind of went through this in the United States in the 17, 1800s, even 1900s, depending on what part of the United States. But much of the title and right of ways and all that kind of stuff has already been settled in the US. But overseas, a lot of this stuff is just really in the process of being settled. And if we're not looking at these kinds of things as consumers, or we as professionals are not helping our clients look at these kinds of things, you can buy a piece of property that's in the middle of a road, and someday maybe they want that road, right? And the property that you bought, you don't get it anymore. Zoning, same thing, right? I mean, we take it for granted that if I build a beautiful home, nobody can build the Hobbit house or a 6-story pink lighthouse right beside me. But that's not necessarily true in Latin America, right? It's your dirt. You can do whatever you want to with it. So again, helping our clients understand that zoning is something we have to ask about and really dig into. So these are the kinds of things from we don't know what we don't know, and we have to forget what we think we know, right? This whole combination of stuff. And there's a lot more to it. I just wanted to provide a couple quick examples. And now we're going to talk about, development and commercial real estate specifically in Central America. We've been developing here for 28 years. We've been doing this a long time. And so just really quickly, what was easier? What was harder, right? Because everything's a mixed bag. There's no, it's all easier, it's all harder. No, it's a mixed bag. And so here's an example of an entitlement process. This was 2005 to 2016. What's that, 11 years for a project to be projected. They didn't even get their entitlement in California, right? This is obviously Pacific Ocean, California, 11 years in the entitlement process to find out you didn't get it, right? Whereas, we have a 2,500 acre, 3.5 mile property, 3.5 miles of Pacific Ocean beachfront in Nicaragua. Our entitlement process took 2 years, right? I mean, it was very efficient. It was very thorough. Environmental reports, lots of information that the government wanted about how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, all that kind of stuff. But a 2-year entitlement process. So that was actually a lot easier, right? And now it's been developed. The golf course is in, the homes are going in, a couple hundred homes there now. So, lots of advantages to being in that part of the world. Low cost of labor. Excellent training programs, exceptional tile, metal, woodwork, right? Craftsmanship is phenomenal. Labor is extremely inexpensive. And so the things that would cost a fortune in the US, tile work, metal work, woodwork, right, are very, very affordable there. So again, it's all about changing how we think when we're working in the region. Here's a great example. I'm putting down cobblestones, making the bricks to put into the ground, right? That picture with the big do not on it's a machine in Europe, right, where they actually lay the same kind of floor and road materials with a machine, right? But in a place like Latin America, it's people that do the work. So again, labor's expensive, equipment is inexpensive. I mean, equipment is expensive. So understanding this and adjusting your work patterns, your contracting patterns to that is critically important. I imagine this. When we were building our golf course, there were no scrapers in Central America. The whole region of Central America did not have a single scraper. I mean, how can you put that in a business plan, right? Again, we don't know what we don't know. So obviously oversight, massive oversight's really important. And then, how did this happen? Well, it happened because, it wasn't oversight well. Again, this is our mistake, right? This is something we had to move it, of course, and that cost money. Things that, again, we wouldn't necessarily think of, right? The standards that we have in the US, like if you design, have an architect in the region design a home, right? And they put in the sewer pipes. Like, would you really think to check that the sewer pipes met a US standard, right? And if you don't, then, you can't flush toilet paper, right? So again, these are the kinds of things I love this one, the sketch, right? I mean, so you give a sketch to what you want and then you get something a little bit different. So again, all of these examples are challenges, right? No hot water hookups in the sinks. We saw the slide of the under the water, but the architects don't put it in, right? So it's not the fault of the guy building it, right? The architect just doesn't run a hot water line to those sinks, right? Light switches in the wrong place behind the doors when they open. Again, these are the kinds of standards that we've developed in the US and North America and Europe that just may or may not exist. And I think the assumption we have to make is that they don't exist. And if we don't think about them because they're standards, why would we think about them as contractors, right? Then we tend to end up with product that doesn't meet the standard because there wasn't one to begin with. It's the subconscious things that we have to bring to consciousness. Supply shortages. I mean, Belize, the country of Belize, I'm actually in Belize today. You can hear some construction noise in the background. We're building our newest condo building here at our Best Western property. The country of Belize ran out of cement for 60 days. I mean, again, it's hard to put that stuff into your business plan. And so, there's lots of good things. Entitlements are faster, labor is less expensive, you can do some really cool things, but gosh, there were a whole bunch of things that were just kind of like, ugh, right? So why bother? Why bother? Well, this is the second big idea: time machine. Right? If literally in each one of our offices or living rooms, wherever we are today, if H.G. Wells showed up in that time machine right there and said, hey, Mike, hey, Ahmed, hey, Teresa, get on this thing. Come on, we're going to go back 20 years. You get to bring one check, just one check with you, and you can run around for the rest of today. You can make one investment, and I'll bring you right back to this moment, at the end of the day. I think all of us would be coming back a lot wealthier, wouldn't we? Right? Hindsight's 2020. The time machine concept is powerful. And so, this is just a cartoon picture of what, H.G. Wells had, right? But there is a time machine. It's a real life time machine. And it's called the path of progress. It's for people in the commercial real estate in the developing world, but also retail real estate, right? It's the developing world. It's a real life time machine. And, I put the various countries on here by simply just asking a very, easy question. I said to myself, if somebody in, the Chicago area got married this weekend, where are they going on their honeymoon next Monday? Right? Pretty simple question, right? You get married on Saturday. Where are you going on your honeymoon? Chicago, Des Moines, Iowa, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, wherever. A ton of them are going to the right side, top right, Bahamas, Cancun, Costa Rica. Some of them going to Panama, some of them coming to Belize. Not very many of them going to El Salvador, Nicaragua, or Honduras, right? Popularity means something in the path of progress. And so when you know what happens over time, because you've watched it happen in the Bahamas, in Cancun, in Costa Rica, right? You can put yourself right in front of the next thing that's going to happen. And, it's not scientific, of course, but it is powerfully anecdotal, and it is historic precedent. Again, history is no predictor of the future, as all the Wall Street people like to say, or are forced to say by the regulatory bodies. But generally, history repeats itself. This is a time machine. It is a powerful concept. And the reason we're going to bother to get on the time machine is that, Zogby, look, this is a huge survey, by the way. 103,000 people were surveyed. That is a massive statistical sampling. 11.6, I call that 1 in 10, right? 1 in 10 North Americans has or is seriously considering property ownership overseas, right? 11,500 baby boomers retire every day for the next 16 years. 11,000 a day for the next 16 years. That is a long tail trend, right? The marketplace, this is a very thin marketplace, right? And down in my part of the world, developing in Central and South America, this marketplace is very crowded. Everybody wants to build the fancy stuff, the waterfalls in the lobbies, the ride home to mom, and the show up on the cover of Architectural Digest magazine someday. This marketplace right here, the middle class marketplace, it's thick with people, right? It is largely ignored and underserved. So again, you choose your areas. We as a company have said to ourselves, we're going to serve the middle class consumers because it's the vast majority of people, and our ability to deliver a product that they want and need in an affordable way is fairly simple to do in our part of the world. People are coming because it's affordable. The quality of life is phenomenal. The cost of living is much lower. Just to give you an example, these are some of the home prices in our beach and golf resort at Grand Pacifica. Homes close to the ocean, oceanfront condos, right? $150,000 to $500,000. So affordability that you really can't get in most of the U.S. anymore. Medical care is phenomenal. Johns Hopkins, JCI accredited institutions, and very, very affordable. So the things that are important to people from a quality of life standpoint, the cost of living. And, we talk about Zogby as a survey, what people think they might want to do. But actually, the numbers of what people are already doing is powerful. 8 million North Americans live outside North America as expats today. 600 and some thousand are registered as retirees at a consulate or an embassy outside the US. So this trend's already happening. And now you throw in this whole new generation, right? These workers who are free to work from home, and home can be anywhere. 45% of millennials have said they want to work and live overseas. This is a huge marketplace, and they are now free to do so because of the remote revolution. Central America, Latin America, we work in Latin America, so I'm going to stick with this. Latin America, a lot of times people assume it's one thing, right? Oh, it's the tropics, right? But it's really not. You've got cold. If you go all the way down to the bottom of South America, you've got skiing in Bariloche in Chile. You got 4 seasons. You've got hot, you've got humid, you've got dry, you've got urban, you've got great cities, you've got resort, you've got country, you've got mountains, you've got beach, right? You have communities, you've got all these different things, and they can be mixed and matched. And I just always like to put this up as just sort of like, here are 5 examples of very different things. Mendoza, Argentina. It's Denver climate, but with Napa Valley amenities, right? It's vineyards right up against the Andes. Cuenca, Ecuador. It's a city of always springtime. Temperatures are in the 60s at night, 70s in the day, every day of the year. It's a beautiful colonial city in Ecuador. If you say, "Oh, I love Phoenix," I love the desert, but I really kind of an ocean person too. Cabo San Lucas. It's desert at the beach, right? The typical, stereotypical tropics, Key West, Ambergris Key, where I am today. And then, places along the Pacific coast, say from southern Mexico down to about the middle of Costa Rica. You've got this Southern California climate of semi-arid cactus and palm trees, right? So you've got lots of different geographies that people are looking at. And so the tropics isn't just one thing. This is the draw. This is why we would want to bother as commercial realtors, right? And serve our clients who may be in a commercial capacity looking to do business in the region, or a retail client who's looking to own a property for lifestyle or investment. Some more examples of other places, again, with varied geographies, but lots and lots of choices offering a wide variety of climate, locale, urban, rural. Some things that are really critical that are in my book as well. Top investing criteria. Really, here are the big ones. The Constitution of the country must treat foreigners and domestics equally. That's really important, right? There's no special favors or prohibitions for a foreigner or a domestic. Low property taxes, of course, and then title. The ability to get title to the property, fee simple title in a common law, escritura publica in a civil law, basically same thing. So these are really, really important criteria for any foreign investor. We certainly suggest people make sure these elements are in play. And so I just throw up a few countries and a few reasons people are looking at them. El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. Whether you love crypto, hate crypto, who cares? Doesn't matter. El Salvador loves crypto. They made Bitcoin legal tender alongside the US dollar a couple years ago. The amount of foreign investment that has just flown into El Salvador, a lot of it in the crypto space, but you'd say, well, what is crypto? Crypto is tech. Crypto's, blockchain. Crypto's computer, right? Crypto is cloud, right? So tons of foreign investment going into the country. And all of those people need homes, they need offices, they need bandwidth, they need infrastructure. There's so much there. And we're just seeing the very beginning of what's going to happen in El Salvador. And the reason is President Bukele has driven the crime rate down to negligible numbers. The guy has done a tremendous job of making El Salvador a very, very safe country to live, to work, to invest. So El Salvador would be a country that I would certainly take a strong look at right now for these 2 reasons. Nicaragua, I lived there for 14 years. I know people like, Nicaragua, but you know what? The data is different than the perception. I think, Dimitro, you talked about the credibility scale in my book. And we can talk about that afterwards, right? The data shows, the data proves that Nicaragua is actually a very, very safe place to live and to work. It's also incredibly inexpensive. We've got about 90 folks on our payroll, including architects, engineers, CPAs, managers. Our total payroll monthly is under $100,000 for just about 100 people, including absolute high-end architects, engineers. So if you said to yourself, "Hey, I'm an engineering company and I want to outsource my engineering, right? My architectural and engineering work." You got great CAD operators, you got people that really understand how to utilize the programming, right? You can outsource that stuff to a country like Nicaragua, which is where we do all of our back-end services for all of our businesses throughout Central America, because the payroll is very, very inexpensive and the quality of the workmanship and workers is tremendous. Panama, somebody mentioned that earlier. We have teak plantations. I planted a plantation, the picture on the left there, back in 1999. That's what it looked like right after we planted our teak trees. The picture on the right was taken last year. Our teak trees are big, tall, mature. And Panama, by the way, has about, I think it's 18,000, that's a big number, 18,000 containers of teak harvested every year, being shipped off to India for processing. So we said, you know what? There's lots of industrial opportunities there. The one we picked was, we're building a sawmill. Right? We're going to process our own lumber. We're going to process lumber for other people. We're going to put like maybe a 0.5% dent in the 18,000 containers headed out the door. Right? But here's an industrial opportunity in a country like Panama for your clients who may be in an industrial space. Caterpillar, Dell, they both have huge call centers down there. English is widely spoken. So again, the logistics of the shipping because of the Panama Canal, but also the friendly nations visa allowing workers to come down is a big part of the reason people are going to Panama for many reasons. Costa Rica, very popular, stable government. People have known it for a long time. It was way high on that where are people going on their honeymoons side of things. A lot of reasons people are going to Costa Rica. A lot of the Fortune 500 companies have set up there. Intel had a fab plant for a long time. They've closed it, but I'm guessing with the nearshoring that's happening now, we may see a lot of that come back to Costa Rica as well. It's a great jurisdiction for many things, but the tech side is a big place that they're seeing people. And then the case study of why Belize, why right now specifically. I think that if we had to look at the popularity of the country, it's in the sweet spot of the curve. It's popular enough to cash flow. People taking their honeymoons here, but it hasn't price appreciated to the way that certainly the Bahamas, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos have, Cancun and other places. So truly in the sweet spot of the curve. Small country, a little under 400,000 folks. English is the official language. Common law is the legal system. Very, very familiar to US and Canadians who understand common law, English being the official language. Wonderful Caribbean country. It's about 180 miles north to south, about 60, 70 miles wide, depending on where you measure it, but lots of Caribbean flavor. But here's the interesting thing. That little island that's circled up at the top right corner of Belize generates 70% of all the tourism revenue for the country. So you got this big country, right? How many square miles that is, but a fairly, it's not a big country, but compared to this little island, 26 miles long, right? 70% of all the tourism revenue comes from that tiny little island. And so if our clients are looking for lifestyle and they want a quiet beach somewhere, there's 180 miles of quiet beach. Go pick one of those areas. But for investors, people who are looking for a place that they can actually, invest in this rising tide of tourism in the country, Ambergris Caye is where you would absolutely want to be because of the volume of business. And to use the time machine concept, Ambergris Caye, Belize, really is the Bahamas, 10, 15, 20 years ago. This is the time machine right now. Here's just some pictures real quick. People are coming here because of, the boating, the sailing, the snorkeling, the fishing, the diving. These are the reasons people are coming from a tourist perspective, and more and more and more people are coming. This slide, this slide, there's a lot of stuff that goes into some other stuff. I'm not going into too much, but I always like to show folks opportunity in visual. if you go back to, was it 2009 to 2019, right? Overnight, these are overnight guests, 300,000 going up to about 500,000. The room inventory went from 1,800 to 2,200. So you've had almost a doubling of overnight visitors and almost a flat line of room inventory. Does anyone else see like incredible opportunity here? Right. This is, and you can't snap your fingers and make room inventory. Room inventory, takes 2, 3, 4 years, depending on what you're doing. Right. So you got to get in soon so that you're ready to catch the upside. And we've done that. I mean, we've been working in Belize for 31 years. We signed a deal with Marriott. We did our ceremonial groundbreaking that, right after we had our funding in place to build our Marriott hotel. We had a nice, celebration, of course. This picture was taken a couple months ago. The steel structure is going up right now. 202 room Marriott oceanfront hotel. Our company is keeping 60% of the residences. 40% are for private sale. We have a lot of realtors. In fact, I'm here with a couple realtors from Austin right now, the Austin Board of Realtors, a couple guys with me looking at these properties for themselves, but also for their clients. Just some, beautiful oceanfront properties starting at 350, and the same product in most other locations, whether it's, Cancun, Bahamas, Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, Cayman Islands, are triple to more than this price. So again, the idea of a time machine where you can actually get in and own a property in Belize, a Marriott oceanfront, full ownership, titled, fee simple title. And if you're looking at this as something you want to present to your clients, we pay a 5% referral fee on the sales price. So that's it. That's how you get a hold of me. If you want to get a copy of my book, I'd be very honored to have you do that. And I'm sure we have some Q&A, right? Demetrio, I don't know.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Mike. That was amazing. Thank you for that. And would it be okay to share this with our guests here later on with the presentation?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Email that out. Great. Well, thank you for that. Let me see if anybody has any questions, because I have a couple. I know, Mike, you touched a little bit on it, but tell me a little bit about the advice credibility scale, because that was an interesting thing you discussed in the book.
Yeah. I don't, yeah, right. So a lot of times people will hear especially if somebody has maybe already done this, right? They say, I'm going to go to a country that's not real popular. Look, if you're going to the Bahamas or, Cancun, nobody says anything to you, right? But if you said, I'm going to Nicaragua, I'm going to El Salvador, right? I mean, chances are most people would go, are you crazy? You're going to get killed, right? That's what you'll hear. You're going to get killed. And so what I did was I came up with the credibility scale where I said, how I would give credibility to somebody's opinion, right? First question is, do you have a passport, right? If they have a passport, if they don't have a passport, I might give them like a 1 or a 0 on the credibility scale. Like, what do you know? You don't even have a passport, right? You don't know. Okay. They have a passport, but they haven't traveled. They haven't used it. All right, well, at least they're thinking about traveling, right? So I'm going to give them a little more credibility. 3, they have a passport and they've been on a cruise, right? Hey, that's good. You've been on a cruise. You've stopped in several ports, right? But you haven't really kind of, gone into a country, so to speak, right? So I'm going to give them more credibility on their opinion. They have a passport. They've been to the country that you're talking about, and they've spent some time there. All right, now I'm going to give you pretty good credibility. And finally, they've lived in that country for some period of time, 3 months, 6 months, years, whatever. Those are the people that, I would give the most credibility to. And I think that's really important because I think so many people are scared off by the majority of people, right? That they talk 10 people and 8 people say, are you crazy? You're going to get killed, right? So you have this sort of democratic thought process. 80% of the people say I'm going to get killed, so they must be right. But if you put the credibility scale in place, you might find out that none of them have passports, and the 2 people that said, "Oh, that's cool. Tell me what it's like when you get back," or we stopped there once. We went through there. We spent a couple of days, right? I mean, if we give credibility to those people, we're more likely to get a much more accurate assessment of what it's like than listening to people who don't have passports or haven't been there.
Definitely. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? Teresa, go for it.
Thank you very much, Mike. First of all, what is my credibility? But secondly, what sort of resources would you give people to do their due diligence on countries if they're thinking about investing outside of the US, right? Because they can hear the information that you gave us, but and that's credible, but
Yeah.
how do we go about doing our due diligence on any particular country if we're thinking about investing outside of the US?
Thank you. That's great. I'm going to give you a 10 on the credibility scale because you actually have been to Nicaragua and you got stuck there for, how long were you there? Like 3-4 weeks? I don't remember.
It was fine. I was having a great time. People were saying, I'm worried about you. You should come back to the US. And I said, what? I'm riding horses and eating seafood, enjoying the beach. You just want me to join your misery.
Yeah.
That was during the pandemic, everyone.
That's it. So you get a 10 on the credibility scale for that reason. I think due diligence is kind of, twofold, right? You've got what I would call the paperwork, right? And then you've got the field work. And I think that paperwork's really important because paperwork's cheap, right? Look, self plug here. Buy my book. Recommend that people buy my book. It's chock full of that consumer resource. I mean, it's $3, folks. It's $3 on Amazon, right? So it's but that or if you don't want to buy the book, no problem. We have the consumer resource guide. It's free. It has 15 questions that people should ask when they buy property overseas. And this notion of why are we talking about questions, right? Questions are great examples of things that we need to think about. 15 questions doesn't even scratch the surface of the thousands of possible questions that you probably need to ask. You don't need to ask 1,000, but there's a pool of 1,000 questions. And if you're buying a property overseas, you might need to ask, 10, 15, 20 of them. So did I hit it all right on the 15? No, those aren't the exact questions you should ask. But the idea with those questions is it helps to shape our thinking or help us to shape how we think, rethink, right? Forget what we think we know, and truly on the paperwork side, but then also the fieldwork side. I want to get to that in a second. Humility is the synthesis of those two ideas. We don't know what we don't know, and we have to forget what we think we know, right? The synthesis there is humility, and if we just approach foreign transactions with humility, we will be so far better served, or our clients will be. It's like the kung fu master who, knows he can kick the crap out of somebody, but walks away from a fight, right? Like the total confidence, right? So it's a blending of confidence, but also the humility. And then the second part in our field work is really important. It's find an expert. Right? There are realtors in almost every country. I know Antonio's here with us, and Portugal, right? There are great realtors in almost every country of the world. And many of them, I say realtors, so they're members of NAR. Many of them have gone through a certified international property specialist, CIPS certification. Some haven't, right? But when you can find a real estate professional that's a member of NAR, so, a realtor, I think that's always a great asset. Find yourself a great lawyer, right? I mean, a lot of people think, I can do it myself. Yeah, sure. Of course you can. You can probably do many things yourself, but is it really what you want to do, right? So I think finding great experts in country, trusted experts like a realtor, like a great lawyer, that's really important, who work on your behalf. So the paperwork, do it up front, learn to ask the questions, in the book or the consumer resource guide, great resources. Do your field work, meet people, employ people, and then really look for their guidance and counsel in the field. I think those two things really are important. And then and stay humble.
Thank you for that. Ahmed next, Oliver, followed by Claudia. Ahmed?
Yeah, great. Yeah, excellent presentation, Mike. Never disappoint. Excuse me. So, question, one of the things you share in your book is concession land, indigenous land ownership, and squatters. Things I'm really familiar with. I've lived in foreign parts of the world where this is a very important part of land ownership. How do you make sure that none of these areas that you're looking at, is that part of your due diligence right up front, that you are not infringing upon the rights of the locals?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of times, well, let me just start with, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, right? I mean, the world is instantaneously communicating, and so there aren't, I'm sure there's some hidden deals out there, but generally there are no hidden deals anymore, right? There's just too much communication to keep them hidden. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So that's a good place to start, right? But this idea of indigenous property or concession land, or in some countries, Panama areas along the coast, rights of possession. One of the things that you'll hear is people will say, and I'm just going to say, sleazy business people, right? Rights of possession title. They'll say that word, rights of possession title, but that's, I mean, the two words don't go together. Rights of possession is one thing, title's another. They're not the same thing. They're not even close to the same thing, right? But you'll hear that a lot. I hear that a lot of, I spend a lot of time all over Central and South America. I meet a lot of, great business people, and I meet a few sleazy ones, right? It's not the majority, but they're out there. And I hear them use the words rights, possession, title. And I just, I'm like, all right, stay away from that guy, right? So if it's title, right? It can be escritura publica, public title in Spanish, right? In civil law, or fee simple title, or strata title, right? Strata title is the fee simple version, horizontal property regime in the civil law. So you've kind of got four different kinds of title, but they're all title, right? They're all public title. My strategy is, once you get a copy of the title, right? I mean, just ask for a copy of the title. And then just walk away. Like, as soon as you hear that, you walk away. Don't waste your time, right? Send me a copy of your title. That's just so easy. Anyone who has one will send it to you. Second thing is you hire a lawyer. My book, I recommend, depending on the value of the transaction, you hire a lawyer who does your work. Then you hire a second lawyer who's maybe more of a procedural administrative lawyer, especially in civil law, to look at the documents that your primary lawyer has made, because civil law is so procedural and so detail oriented, it's almost impossible to get it right the first time. Transposing passport numbers or something like that. I mean, just little things, right? So hire a second lawyer. If the property transaction's over, certainly over $1 million, I might even hire a third lawyer. It's cheap. It's super inexpensive to hire a lawyer to review a document, right? Look at this, make sure it's perfect. I want no mistakes. If you find any mistakes, let me know, right? And so I think that's really important to protect you from, mistakes in the title process. But stay away from anything that's not titled. That's just my hard fixed rule for us anyway.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Oliver?
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Mike, for a great presentation as always. The question that I get quite often, more recently actually, is the idea of being concerned for health. So how do you address that in terms of medical coverage and the level of the medical service? And the second one, if you could share the latest in terms of financing for buyers, in particular US buyer, how you could structure a deal outside of just pure cash.
Sure. Great questions. On the health question, I think that's so individual. What we do, our team, our property consultants and residency consultants, we really work with each individual very specifically on that. And we early in the process identify, how important is it to be close to a hospital, right? I mean, there are lots of people that live in Wyoming, Montana, Kansas, Nebraska. I mean, there are lots of people who live pretty far away from medical care, right? And if you say, look, I'm okay being 30, 40 minutes, an hour away from a hospital, great. There are lots of people who are okay with that. On the other hand, some people want the hospital right around the corner. And so we do a very good job of having that conversation up front so that we can make appropriate recommendations to somebody. By the way, many times the appropriate recommendation we have is, don't buy from us. You need to talk to a different realtor. You need to talk to a different developer because what we have doesn't fit your profile, whether it's a health related thing or something else, right? And so Health is, again, very personal, but there's great healthcare. Panama has the Johns Hopkins facility right there in Panama City. Costa Rica's got the SEMA system throughout the country. Great facilities. Nicaragua, I mean, it has a JCI Gold accredited hospital in Managua, a burn center where they fly kids in from all over Central America, like the premier burn center for Central Americas in Managua, Nicaragua, right? So, I mean, these things aren't really intuitively obvious, but they're there. So medical care is important, critically important, but more important for some people, less important for others, depending on age and proximity. So I think hope that's a good answer, Oliver. On the second question, financing in the region is extremely difficult. And I just mentioned specifically how we ended up with our Marriott financing. There are no big commercial banks that will lend to foreigners generally, and no U.S. bank or U.S. lender is going to lend money on a Marriott hotel in Belize. So we actually worked with a gentleman who's, depending on the price of Bitcoin, a Bitcoin billionaire. I think right now he is. Anyway, so he put up some Bitcoin as collateral. We worked with a third party and then a funder. We were able to get a loan and line of credit against the Bitcoin as collateral to be able to build our Marriott. And then we've had a bunch of our own money in it and some sales as well. So just different elements. But it is hard to find commercial money. I'll just use that word, commercial money, for projects in Latin America, which is sadly why you see so many failed projects. If you up and down the beach of Ambergris Caye here in Belize, or even in places like Costa Rica and Panama, you see unfinished projects because people run out of money and they don't have banks or backstops to get it. So that's another good question, and it's in the book. It's in the Consumer Resource Guide, right? This idea of show me the money, right, up front. When you're going to buy a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 condo, right? Especially if it's a condo, right? If it's a home and it's a piece of land, it's a little different, right? But if it's a condo building, like, you can't have your condo until all the condos are done, right? You got to build this, whatever, $20, $30 million building before you get your particular condo. And so I think asking to see finances, asking to see financials, sign an NDA, right? Get those documents and look at those. Or if you're doing it on behalf of a client, you can review those documents for the client and say, yeah, these guys have funding in place. They've got a good business plan. They can get this done. It is challenging, Oliver, for those reasons. And again, from our perspective as real estate professionals and serving our clients, we can help make sure that our clients end up in a project that gets finished, they get their condo, and that's the best possible outcome, and we can help ensure that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Claudia, and I'm sorry, Amani and Thomas, just because of time. Claudia, you ask your question, then we'll have to go into the networking afterwards. Claudia, you're up. If you can unmute yourself. Claudia, are you available? If not, Amani, if you can ask your question, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the very informative presentation, Mike. I was wondering, what do you think about the language barrier? Like, would I refer someone to live in Morocco if they don't speak English, or in Latin America? How do you go about this? Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, great question. When I moved to Nicaragua, I spoke no Spanish. But I had a job to do. I had to get our Grand Pacifica community going, and so I hired an entirely bilingual staff. I started taking Spanish lessons. They were teasing me a little bit before the meeting started this morning about Senor C, which is a totally different story. But anyway, I think most people who are looking at going overseas for lifestyle, right, are pretty adventurous people. And so I don't think necessarily that the language barrier would be a high hurdle for a lifestyle person, simply because they're generally pretty adventurous. I find that most people can learn enough of the language to get around in a couple months, get to the store, just, daily living, whatever you got to do. But if you really make a serious effort at learning the language, you can. I don't think it's a big detractor for an investment at all. Actually, I think that some of the best investments may be in countries where you don't speak the language really, at all. But it's sort of like the analogy of a pizza parlor. If you hate anchovies, right, but you own a pizza parlor, I'm guessing that you would still serve anchovy pizza, because it's not about what you like, it's about what your clients like, right? And so you could have an investment in a country where you don't speak the language that's extremely popular, lots of honeymooners coming if it was a, kind of a tourism kind of thing. And so, and especially if it's hands off, if it's an active business, then you're definitely going to want to have some mastery of the language. But in most cases, as we found out, we could hire a bilingual staff and build a business in a country where I did not speak the language. Not saying it's optimal. I'm just saying it is possible. But it's a great question. But a lifestyle buyer, maybe less important, just because they're generally pretty adventurous people.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Teresa. Let's go into the networking.
Thank you, everyone, for attending as the recording stopped.